Hi, thanks for joining today for our template editor training. Today we are going to walk through the review of our template functionalities. We will also show you how to locate, filter, and share your templates across other practice members. We will show you how to modify what we refer to as a system template, as well as creating your own custom templates. And then we'll go through some next steps and resources. Now, I'd like to start by talking about the difference and defining what a note type is versus a template versus a text shortcut. Now, this picture kind of gives us a brief example of what these are. The note type you will see when you initiate a note up here in the top left. This is an H&P note, and it is basically the structure of the note. You can see kind of behind the scenes, this is an H&P, it has a title, and then there are very specific sections of a note. Okay, that's what we call our note type. Now, within those sections, you have various different functionalities that are supported. For example, we have text shortcuts, which are a block of text that you can just very quickly pull into a specific section of a note, versus a template, which is what we're going to spend most of our time on today, which actually helps to streamline your documentation in specific sections of the note that support templates. So let's go ahead and take a deeper dive into those areas to make sure we understand and are aligned completely on what they mean. Now, when I first log into Tebra, I'm going to be taken to the dashboard, and I'm logged in as a test provider, and that provider kind of lives in this in-office bucket. So you can see I've got a patient here listed, and their note is in progress. The medical assistant may have initiated this. If I click in this blue area, it's going to have a little orange button at the bottom to view the note that was started. So when I click on View Note, it will take me to the specific note type that was initiated by the clinical assistant. Now, to look at the various different note types that are active for this particular provider, you're going to be able to click on this drop-down and see all of the note types that are listed here. And these are all system note types. This particular provider has not created any custom ones that are active. Now, our SOAP note has very specific sections that are included. We have our chief complaint, subjective, and so on. So I want to make sure you understand that the note type itself is really just that structure with the heading and the specific sections that you want, as you are able to create your encounter and document in those sections. Now, this can be completely customized by creating a custom note type if you want. If you wanted to name, instead of SOAP, a follow-up visit or something different than SOAP. If you wanted to change the CC to say chief complaint, or you wanted subjective to say HPI, maybe you want to add a completely different section for treatments that you're doing or something like that. You can absolutely do that by creating a custom note type. And if you have not participated in our workshop for custom note types, I would absolutely encourage you to do so. That workshop also goes over what text shortcuts are and how those are created. Now, within each of the sections that are part of this structure of the note, those sections are going to have different functionalities that are supported. So in addition to being able to free text here in the chief complaint section, you also have the ability to create a text shortcut or use the text shortcut option. In subjective, you have the functionality of text shortcut as well as templates, and templates are what we're going to be spending most of our time on today. So let's just look at what a text shortcut is real quick so we can differentiate what that is. A text shortcut is a block of text that you have created that is already pre-populated behind the scenes. So if I come in and I look for various different things, these are some different text shortcuts that I've created. If I click on one of those, it's going to populate a specific block of text that I put in here. Okay, now obviously this isn't specific to subjective, but if there was something that I wanted to pull in, I could just boom, and it is right there and everything populates all at once. That's what we call a text shortcut. Now I'm going to delete this and I'm going to show you what a template is. A template is a list of questions in the subjective section that are associated with whatever template that we have selected. Now, back pain happens to be my template, that is my default template. So it's going to auto-populate because subjective is one of the sections that is included in my back pain template. Now, if I had a patient that was being seen for something totally different than back pain, I would need to click on this little arrow to the right, and it's going to show me up here at the top some of my favorite templates that I have starred, and then some of the other templates that have the subjective section that are listed in here. And in a moment, we'll go back behind the scenes to show you where this library of templates is actually stored and how you can activate and deactivate different templates that perhaps you may not be using or you won't be using, and maybe activate some that you will be using. So this is our whole library of templates, and I am able to come in, and maybe this patient is being seen for knee pain. I could very quickly change that to knee pain. In fact, I could even star it and have it jump up into favorites next time, and then I can select at the bottom. Now I'm in my knee pain template. If I needed to change that to a different template, I would come in and select something else. Now, in the subjective section, what this knee pain template does is it lists very specific questions that are associated with knee pain. And the provider comes in, and what is the reason for visit? It's an initial evaluation, or what's the onset? They can come in and they can make selections based on what they are seeing here in the template. You don't have to select everything. If there is a little arrow at the bottom or at the top, then the template's going to move up and down, and you could come in and make the selections for the ones that you want to have populate. There are different types of answers. So all of these questions have different types of answers. And some of the answers are what we call a single select, where they're able to just come in and make simple posterior. And if this particular answer was just a single select, it would not allow me to select anything else. It would just close right here. But I can tell you that this is a multi-select because it's going to allow me to choose multiple answers. So the child type for this question is multi-select, and you can choose multiple answers. Sometimes you'll get things like positive and negative. That's a positive and negative child type where I can come in and put in positives or negatives. And then you also have what we call a picker. So a picker allows you to come in, and it actually goes into a third menu where it shows you the duration of hours. And I have to click on that arrow over here to pick how many hours this may have been going on for the last 48 hours. And then I always have to click save if there's a save button here. Pickers that are numbers, that are dates, or that are alpha pickers. So for example, this one that says duration and describe, rather than having a number picker here, it allows me to come in and say for 2 weeks or something else where I can actually use my alpha characters and then click save to be able to populate additional information here. So we have lots of different types of pickers. This will never go more than 3 menus out. And based on what you make as your selection, when we say close, it's going to populate here in a narrative form based on all of the answers that you selected in a template. So as you go to create your own custom template, you can have your own special questions that you want, and then you can give us examples of what types of answers that you want to have for each of those questions. So kind of keep that in mind as you're thinking about your templates that you're wanting to build. Now, subjective has questions and answers, and most of the sections that support templates, like the subjective section does, are going to all work like this. But there are two exceptions to that. And those two exceptions are going to be the objective or exam section and also the plan section. So I want to click into objective. I want to go to template over here. And I'm going to show you the difference. Again, up here at the top is going to be the name of the template that we are currently working with. And if your template has this section as part of it, then it will auto-populate because that's what we used up above. If your template that you're working with is not associated with this section, it will default to another template that is associated with this section. If I needed to change, again, click on that arrow, come in, look at the different templates that we have, and make the proper selection. Notice because I starred that knee pain previously, it jumped up here into my favorite templates. Now, you'll notice that in this section, things are a little bit different. And what this section does that is unique and different than the subjective section is that it has an exam that is automatically going to pull in. Now this one says musculoskeletal because that is the proper system of the body that we're going to use for knee pain. You can see that there are the other 13 systems of the body and they're listed in a very specific order. And so those systems will be used depending upon what system is part of the template that you're working in. So just for fun, I'm going to come in and I'm going to change to an atopic dermatitis template. And you'll notice when I do that and I make that selection that my exam now turned to the derm system. You can see I've got several things here for derm lesion, which wasn't showing previously when I was in the musculoskeletal exam. If I were to come in and select another template, that this one happens to be for atrial fibrillation, when I make that selection, it's going to use the cardiovascular system. So when you create your own templates, you can choose which exam it's going to be associated with. And even if you do choose an exam, if you wanted to come in and manually change that exam, I could come back and I could change this back to musculoskeletal if I want, and it's going to change all of these questions down below to be associated with that musculoskeletal system. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my knee pain template just so I can move along here and show you that in the exam section, we have two brand new child types. And those two brand new child types are going to be the one-click normal and pertinent findings. So let's come in and look at how this works. With a one-click normal, you're intended to check everything as though it is all normal. And then as you come in, you can deselect the items that potentially are not normal, okay? Once you make those selections, you would go to the pertinent findings and say, oh, what I found was, and then you can come in and fill out what the pertinent findings were that you found, okay? And again, we can go into up to 3 menus here. Now, we can go into each of these certain systems of the body, and we can add additional information if we want, okay? And I'm just randomly selecting things, but this is up to you if you want to come in and continue going through your exam. Now, the difference in the way that the template functionality works here in the exam section is that when I select close here, it is not going to populate in a narrative form like it did in subjective. Instead, it's going to populate in a list form based on these systems of the body and what systems you have actually answered questions associated with. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say close, and you'll notice that each of the system I answered questions associated with are going to populate here. The general, HEENT, neck, extremities, musculoskeletal, neuro, etc. So the system will populate first. You will see the normals right after the system name, which is going to be in all caps with a colon. You'll see the normals, and then you'll see the pertinent findings that you selected, plus any additional things that you selected when you were going through the actual exam questions down further. Okay, so objective populates in a list form based on the systems of the body, normals first, pertinent findings, and then additional items. Now I'm going to come back to this template for a moment. If I happened to come back in here and start making additional selections that are listed here, it will all follow in this exact order, starting with exam, the general, and then moving all along here. Okay, you cannot change the order of the way this list populates. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this so that you know it's going to be in this order regardless. Okay, so that's the order. If we didn't address a certain system, it just gets left out here. All right, let's look at the plan section and see how that functionality is even different from the objective. So I'm going to click on plan. I'm going to go to template. And now we're going to, again, that knee pain, because the plan section is associated with that, auto-populates. I could click on the arrow right here, and I could come in and select a different template if I want. But I'm going to keep it at knee pain. And then I'm going to go through, and rather than thinking of these as questions, they are actually thought of as categories. So let's look at the procedure category. In this procedure category, we actually have some subcategories, and the subcategories are kind of listed here in a little bit of bolded writing. And so the procedures are listed here, and then there are simple checkboxes. And in the plan section, it will never go more than 2 menus out. You're not going to have that third menu like you did up in subjective and also in objective. So basically what populates in the plan section are just the simple checkboxes that you select. Okay, so I've picked 3 checkboxes, and then you'll notice, do you see that little thing that pops up? That's actually kind of a hint, and it gives you the ability to help. Maybe you're a provider that is working with a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant or even just a student, and you're trying to help them to determine what to do in this plan section. You can put these little tooltips in to help them know what it is that they should be doing. It's never going to populate on the note. It's just something for them to see when they kind of hover over these items. And you can see not all of them have a tooltip, but if there is, when you go to select it, you'll see it populate. I can come down here. There's only one subcategory on this one, and I can come in and populate some answers. Patient instructions, I've got a couple of subcategories here, and I can come in and populate a few things here. There was another tooltip that came through somewhere I just saw it pop up. And then maybe follow-up and referrals. Again, different subcategories. I can come in and answer these questions here and then select close. Now, when I select close here, unlike subjective where it populates in a narrative form, or objective where it populates in a list form associated with the specific system of the body, the plan section also populates in a list form, but the only thing that's going to populate is what is next to those check boxes. So basically, it's your list of things in your plan to help that patient get better. You just populate all of them in a simple list form. Okay, so to review, subjective and any other place that supports templates with the exception of objective and plan, is going to work like this, where they have questions and those questions have potential answers, okay? That's how most templates are going to work, and it will populate in a narrative form based on the selections you've made. Objective is going to populate in a list form based on the systems of the body, and that list will always start with general and go down to psych, and it will populate any of the systems that you are addressing, and any that you are not addressing will just be removed, but it will still be in this order, okay? In the plan section, the templates are only going to go 2 menus out. We'll never go 3, it'll just go 2. And once you make your selections here, it is going to populate in a list form. So these are not like questions, these are categories. The bold over here are subcategories, and then the simple checkboxes that you select are what's actually going to populate. And again, that is going to be in a list form with just the simple checkboxes, as that's the only child type that you have the option of selecting in this plan section. Okay, so now that we've seen how the templates function within the note, I'm going to save and close out of here, and we're going to go behind the scenes to see how all of this is created. I'm going to come here to our user profile icon, and I'm going to go to My Settings. Once I click onto My Settings, there are multiple choices over here on the left. I'm going to talk briefly about the note types. Remember, that's where you need to start. We used a SOAP note, and this is a system note type, right? When I click on SOAP, you're going to see all of the sections that were part of my note. Now, if you wanted to create a custom note type and change names and so forth, you would come over here and copy this, put a new heading, make your changes that you need. This is how you would create all of those changes. Now, I'm going to actually call this a follow-up visit, and I'm going to add in a new section. And the new section that I'm going to add is actually a minor procedures section. And I'm doing this intentionally because I'm going to put in some specific things, and I want to change the name of that section. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to change the name of my minor procedure section by clicking on this icon, which allows me to come in and change it. And I'm actually going to call this, let's just call it treatment suggestions, okay? And I'm going to say save. Now, this treatment suggestions is originally from the minor procedure section, and that plays a huge part when we're actually creating templates. So just keep that in mind, okay? So I now have my new note type and I have these treatment sections, and I'm going to say save. Now, once I save a new note type, this follow-up visit, notice that it says my creator is Lane, the test provider that I am logged in as. And so Lane is currently the only one that has access to this. See, this little shared button doesn't have anything in that column. If I reopen that note and I come down to the bottom, you'll notice there's a publish option. And I can publish this so that other users in my practice have access to it. I'm going to go ahead and hit publish. And once it's published, it's going to be available to everyone. And I say that because you're going to want to make sure that anybody that you are working with has access to those note types. Okay, once you have published, then you will see this little icon that indicates that you have shared this with everyone else in the practice, okay? And I want to use this because it's important for me to show you how you're going to add different sections into the template that you may be creating. Also in the My Settings section, you see the text shortcuts, and we briefly talked about that. Sometimes people are more interested in having text shortcuts instead of all the questions that a template might have. If I were to click on text shortcut here, you're going to see all the text shortcuts that I have created for my account. Basically, you can come in and click on New. You can add a name for your shortcut, and you can populate text here. And then when you make that selection instead of template, it's just going to populate everything that you put in the text. So just wanted you to know where those text shortcuts are housed and how you can come in and edit those as well. But today we're going to talk about templates. So I'm going to click on templates here at the bottom. And I want to start by just navigating here this template editor dashboard. So by default, it takes you to the active templates. Now, earlier when we were in the note, I showed you that the back pain template was my default template. And I also showed you that I was able to change it to some of the other active templates. These are all of the active templates that we have in this account that are able to be used when we are working in a note, okay? If I wanted to deactivate something, I would simply come in, put a check mark next to it, and deactivate it. Now, once I do that, it would move from the active view into the inactive view. So if I come into inactive, you're going to see lots of things that I have inactivated. Here's that ADHD child that I just deactivated. You also can come in and set what we call a specialty filter. So the specialty filter allows you to come in by selecting more actions. You can actually choose something close to your specialty. We have just some very, very common specialties here. And what this does, I'm just going to choose family medicine, is it goes in and it looks at everything that is currently active, and it's going to deactivate anything that may not be applicable to family medicine. So I'm going to apply this filter, and several things are going to go into the inactive button after I did that. Notice my ADHD child came back because that's part of family practice. Now, really all that does when you click on Set Specialty Filter is just deactivate several things for you, okay? And I suggest that you go into the inactive button and come in and see, did anything get deactivated that shouldn't have? Maybe you do acupuncture. Maybe you need to come in and check all of those and activate them back, okay? Or maybe you do obstetrics as a family practice, and you might want to pull some of those things back. You can always come in and reactivate anything that got deactivated. And all you do is put the check marks next to them and say activate. Okay? The other thing you can do by clicking on something is, I'm going to go back to my active button so I can see my active templates, is you can select which one you want as default. Now, I told you my back pain is my default template. I could come in and say my bronchitis I wanted as default. To make the default template, you put a check mark here and basically click on Set as Default. Okay? I'm going to change it back to back pain because I like my back pain as my default, but that's how you change what is default. Okay, so I'd also like to talk about the column headings. Now, when I click on the template name option, it's going to sort these templates alphabetically, either starting with A or starting with the last letter here. Okay, specialty is going to sort these by specialty, and you'll see we have lots of different specialties, even though I selected family practice. We have when they were last updated, and then we also have types. Now you'll see that there is a custom as well as system templates. The one other or additional template that is not listed here is a shared template. So system templates will always be here, and they will always be called system, and you cannot get rid of them. You can deactivate them, but they will always be system templates and you cannot edit them. What you can do is you can make an exact replica, which is what I did here with my back pain template. And once you make a replica, you just have to rename it, and then you can go in and edit it as much as you want. But you'll see that my regular back pain template is still intact. It's still my default template. It is a system template, and I am not able to change that at all. Okay. Now, if I do create a custom template and I'd like to share that with someone else in my practice, I simply put a check mark next to the template that says custom. You cannot share system templates, so don't try and share those. It won't let you. But if it is custom, you can put a check mark, click on the share button, and then it will list all of the people in the practice that have either clinical or provider privileges. So you can come in and share these with anyone, even admins you can share that with. And so I can go in and make that a shared template, and then it will change to shared. Refresh that, and I can show you that now if I sort by type, I have custom, and if someone were to share something with me, then I would have something that was shared with me. So those people that I just shared with will have that template in a type of shared. Now, I would like to go to my default template, which is the back pain template. I want to open this up and talk about what is inside the template. So let's just click on the name to be able to open up and see behind the scenes of the template. You're going to see a save tab, and it will save every 5 minutes. I'm going to encourage you to click save as many times as you can to make sure that you're not losing things. However, because I've opened up a system template, it's telling me you're trying to save a system template. You can't make changes, but you can create a custom copy and rename the template. So I'm going to say, all right, that's what I want to do. I'm going to hit yes here. And then I'm just going to call this BP for back pain. And then I'm going to put my initials here. And I'm going to click on save. Okay. Now, I mentioned to you previously that as I was going through the note, I was able to see my template in specific sections like subjective and objective or exam and plan. And the reason for that is because all of those sections are part of my template. So if I look at subjective, those are those questions we talked about previously. And next to those questions are going to be those potential answers and maybe even that third menu, right? So as I come in and look at those questions, you're going to see how it goes from the first menu to the second menu to the third menu, like we showed when we were in the visit note, okay? When I go to the exam section over here on the left side, there's that one-click normal. And there's the pertinent findings. Now, if you recall, we had a lot of other systems of the body down below and a bunch of other questions. And those all come by default because I've selected the musculoskeletal exam. And you remember we went through that and Derm and a couple of others, right? Then if we go to care plan, these are those categories that we saw. And then these are the subcategories. And then these are the checkboxes, okay? So this is just kind of helping you to understand how those sections work. But what I really want to focus on right here is the section and care plan and how this coordinates with what we had back in the visit note, okay? Just those 3 sections. We didn't have any other sections. So if we went in and tried to look for a back pain template, we were not going to find it in anything but these 3 sections. I'm going to click save here just to make sure I have this listed. Now, over to the right here, we have keywords and specialties. Really, this doesn't do a whole lot. Keywords has some different things listed here. This does not do anything, so I would disregard or ignore this section. In specialties, This says chiropractic, family practice, general practice. The only one that you're ever going to see is the top one. And it's when we're sorting back behind on this page when we sorted the specialty. So if you want to add a specialty, you can. You certainly do not have to add a specialty when you're creating something, okay? I also want to talk about the different sections. These are the sections of the note that you're going to find things in. This is the menu 1, this is the menu 2, and this is menu 3. And then down below we have what we call macro text, and we're going to go through and explain what all of this does. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to have a note going so that we can make some changes here and actually see where it populates in the note. So I'm going to go up here to the top of the screen. I'm going to click onto a new browser tab by clicking on the plus sign. And then I have my Tebra right here, app.careo.com, which will automatically log me into this same account that I'm working in so that I can go back and forth here. Now, I want to go back into this note that was initiated because I want to be able to make some changes to this note. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and view the note. Okay. Now, whenever you have two browser tabs that are open, you're going to want to go back and forth. So here on this first one, I've got my behind the scenes of the template. And here on this one, I have an open note. You'll want to go back and forth within about 12, 13 minutes, because at 15 minutes, you're going to get logged out. And I don't want you to lose anything that you're currently working on. Now, currently, I have a SOAP note here. But do you remember I created that follow-up visit note? And that's now showing up here as a note with a different structure. I'm going to actually choose this note. And it tells me I might lose some of the narrative stuff that I have here, and that's fine. But I want you to see what this does. Notice that now this says follow-up visit as my heading. It still has all the sections that I had before, which is why I'm still seeing some of this. But remember, I put in this brand new thing called treatment suggestions, okay? This treatment suggestions actually supports templates, right? But how do I add that section and create a template in here? We're going to talk about how to do that in a moment. I also want you to see mental functional also supports templates. But if I come in here and I look at all of the library of templates by clicking on this little arrow, I don't see my knee pain or my back pain or anything. Why not? Well, if you recall, I'm going to come back here behind the scenes. I don't have a mental functional section listed over here with anything, which is why I'm not seeing the knee pain or back pain template. I would have to add that section and put some things in here for it to be able to show. So even though you have templates active, does not mean you're going to see it in every section if the template that you are working with does not have that section listed over here. Super critical that you understand that. To add a section here, you simply click on Add, and then Section, and then it wants a key. Now, if I click on this drop down, there are going to be some that I can add in here that are already listed, and I don't have to have a key for them. Well, I already have a subjective, and you can only have one of each section here. I already have my exam. We pick the musculoskeletal, which is here. So I'm actually going to add ROS just to do it real quick and show you what that is. After I add it and hit save, now I have an ROS section. I don't have any questions or answers in it, but I do have an ROS section, and I'm going to click save. Okay, now my template is called BP for back pain and then my initials. If I came back behind the scenes into this note, okay, and I'm going to refresh because I did just add a section into my template, I don't have an ROS over here in my note. But if I add an ROS section, which I can do by adding some optional sections here, I can come down and I can find an ROS. When I add it this way, I don't have any control over where it's going to show up. So it's just going to show up in the notes somewhere over here. Let's see where it showed up. Looks like it added it way down here at the bottom, okay? But I know the ROS section supports templates. When I click on template here, it's going to go to my default template. If I click to the right, it's going to show me all of the templates that have an ROS section. And look, here's mine right here. If I click on the template that I just created and say select, there it is. Of course, there's no questions or answers because I haven't added anything yet. But that's how you actually add a section, okay? Now, I'm going to go back up into my first browser tab, and I'm going to show you how you can add a section like I did for the treatment that I had. So if I come to add and I go to section, it's going to ask me for a section key. And I'm thinking, I have no idea what the section key is. How am I going to find the section key? I don't see anything called treatment anything here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go to this little question mark. And this is going to open up our help site, okay? And I always tell people click on open article because it'll open that and take you to where you can see it bigger. When you go in here, you're going to, depending upon where you are, it's going to give you information about where we're at and give you some specific article. And in this particular article, there's a link to the template editor here, okay? But what I'd like you to see is if you were to go directly to the Help Center and you were to scroll down under training here, there are user guides. And if you click on the user guide, the very last user guide that's listed here is our template editor guide. So I want to make sure you know where to find that template editor guide, okay? Once you've found this template editor guide, I believe it's page 18 if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to come up here and put 18 here at the top. And you're going to see these key codes, which is what you need to be able to create a new section. So, do you remember when I created that custom note type, what the original heading was for the section that I used? I know that I named it treatment suggestions, but what did I start with? I started with a minor procedures section, and I renamed my minor procedures section to say treatment suggestions. Well, because it started as minor procedures, this is the key code that I need to add, KCT _ MP, okay? I'm going to go back behind the scenes into where I was here. In my template, I'm going to say add a section, and I'm going to type in the key code for minor procedures, KCT _ MP. Once I add it in, it's kind of silly. You have to click over here on the light blue and select save so that it adds it in here. This is the minor procedures section. But for my particular visit note, minor procedures actually says something different. Okay, so I've saved my template. I'm going to go back into my note over here up at the top. And I'm going to refresh up here by making sure that it knows that I've refreshed everything. And then I'm going to go into this treatment suggestions area. And I'm going to go to template. And here is suture removal because that's the default one for minor procedures. But look, here's another template right here, this BPSG. And if I select it, you're going to see it's here. I don't have any questions or answers yet, but that's how I'm going to add that section, okay? So make sure if you pull in a new section into your custom note type and you rename it, that you know what the original section name was so that you know what key code to use. Okay, let's go back behind the scenes on our first browser tab. And now my BPSG template has 5 different sections of the note that I can come in and edit or make changes to, okay? This is my own custom note type, and I'm gonna come in, and it's already populated because I actually started with a back pain template. I saved it, I renamed it, and now I'm gonna just modify and edit this. This is the easiest way to begin a template. You can start from scratch and click Create Template up here, but then you've got to add all your sections, you've got to add all your questions, and a lot of times just starting from an existing template and just kind of modifying is a very easy way to do that. So what we're going to do is talk about all the child types and how they work and how we can modify these templates. Okay, I want to start with subjective, and I want to talk about that first question, reason for visit. When I highlight the question here, it's going to show me in the second menu what the potential answers are. But I want you to see what's behind the scenes of this reason for visit. So I'm going to click on Edit to see what it's showing. The first thing that you need to know is what kind of a child type is in that next menu. And for this particular one, it has what we call a multi-select, meaning you can select as many answers as you want from the second menu. The label indicates what the question's going to be. When you are in the note and you're looking at your questions and you're asking those of your patient, that's what your question's going to be. But the macro text is probably the most important because the macro text actually shows what is going to populate in the visit note. So you ask the question, what's your reason for visit? They tell you they're here for back pain, but your macro text says, I want it to say patient presents for, and then these triple X's, and they are lowercase x's, and they are surrounded by squiggly parentheses, which are located next to the P, like Paul on your keyboard. So you do a squiggly this way with 3 lowercase x's and end it with a squiggly, and we put a period here. This is a placeholder. This says, hey, go to the next menu, gather my answer, and bring it back and put it right there where that X is, okay? So if the reason for visit has these potential answers, let's look and see what's behind the scenes of those answers. I'm going to click Edit. And it says child type of none. You think, well, what does that mean? Well, what that means is it's not going to the third menu. It doesn't need to. It's going to stop right here. And it has a label of initial evaluation of back pain symptoms. Notice there's nothing in the text box. If there is nothing in the text box, it will automatically populate in the note what is listed here in the label. Okay, I'm going to hit save. In the second one where it says follow-up back pain evaluation, notice that this says follow-up evaluation of back pain. When you do have something in the text box, this is going to override what's in the label, and this is what's actually going to populate in the note. So it's not going to say follow-up back pain evaluation. It's going to say follow-up evaluation of back pain. It swaps those because that's what they wanted for the question, and this is how they wanted it to populate in the note. Okay, so you don't have to have something in the text box if it's going to be identical, but if you want it to be different, you will need to populate the text box. Okay, and remember this says text. In menu 1, it doesn't say text. Menu 1 says macro. macro has to have something in it. Even if you want it to say reason for visit, you still have to put something in macro, okay? So this is our question. These are our potential answers. Now, down below here, this helps you to see exactly what your note's going to look like. It's going to say patient presents for XXX. The condition is XXX, back pain, and so on. It is pulling behind the scenes everything behind each of these questions, and it's populating them here, separated by what we call an OR bar. So this is the first question with an OR bar, the next question with an OR bar, next question, and so on. Okay, now if I come in and decide, oh, I don't want to say patient presents for, I want this to say patient is here for, I'm going to come in and say is here for XXX, and I need to sync. If I don't sync, it's not going to read this. What syncing does is it goes in behind the scenes here under my reason for visit, since that's a first question. And when I click edit, it has now changed that to say is here for XXX, okay? If I change it back here to patient presents for and say save, notice down here where it says is for, it's going to change back to presents for, okay? So this just helps you to see what is going on in the note and what it's going to look like. So you always have to have something in the macro text. And if you are going to the next menu, you need to have those triple X's that show you what you're going to grab here and will show up over here. Now, if for some reason I wanted that reason for visit moved down to my last question, see how this says patient presents for right here, and I move this down all the way to the bottom? Notice it's going to start now with condition, and the patient presents for is all the way down here at the bottom, because these follow the order and what is listed here. I'm going to move it back up to the top. I just wanted you to see how that populates, okay? So what I've shown you here is the questions, editing and seeing what is going to populate in the note, what the actual question is going to read, and what the different child type is, and how you can manipulate something that is existing. Now what I'd like to do is I'm going to go here to that KCT_MP where I have nothing, and I'm going to show you how you can create a brand new question. So we're going to say add, and then the first thing we need to determine is what kind of a child type do we want it to be? Do we want them to be able to choose multiple answers on the other side in the menu too, or just a single answer? And do we want it to be a picker or a positive, negative, or none? So what we're going to do is we're going to do one of each of these just so you can see what that looks like. Let's start with just a single select. So the label needs to be the question that we want to ask. So I'm going to make this very simple. Does the patient need treatment? Okay, that's my question. And then for my macro, this is what's going to actually populate in the visit note. So I'm going to say the patient needs treatment with a colon, and then really I'm going to want it to say either yes or no. So remember those little squigglies next to the P like Paul, the little kind of squiggly with 3 lowercase x's, and then close it with the squiggly next to it. And all I'm looking for in menu 2 is a single select, so I can only make one answer, yes or no, okay? And it's going to come back and it's going to populate here. So I'm going to say save. But now I need to come into menu 2 and add my answer. So I'm going to add an answer. And do I need it to go to menu 3? No, I don't. I'm just going to end it here. And my label is going to say yes. So yeah, they need treatment. And then I'm going to save and add another. But this time I'm going to say no. But I'm going to use my text so you can see no, and I'm going to put some additional information. No, the patient does not need treatment. Okay, and then I'm going to save that. So this is a single select child type, and I only can choose one or the other. I'm going to hit save, and then we're going to go back. Ooh, see my little timeout pending? I don't want that to go away. Oh, I hope I didn't do that. I'm going to refresh this, and I'm going to go into my treatment suggestions because that's the one under minor procedures. I'm going to click on template, and I'm going to change it to my BPSG. And now here I've got my question. Does the patient need treatment? And I'm either going to select yes or no. Now notice when I choose it, it's not going to let me choose anymore because I chose a single select. When I say close, it's going to populate just like I told it to. The patient needs treatment, and it pulled in my answer of yes. But remember, if I would have selected no, it's not just going to say no, it's going to actually choose what I put in the text. No, the patient does not need treatment. So I want to make sure you understand the difference there. Okay, let's go back behind the scenes and let's add another question. So we're going to say add, and this time we're going to say multi-select. So what treatment was given to the patient? And then we're going to say treatment given was, and then again using our little squigglies and the 3 lowercase x's. And then I'm going to put a period because I want that to be the end of my sentence, and I'm going to say save. So now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to just add a bunch of different treatments. So I'm going to click on add. And again, I don't need it to go to the next menu. So I'm just going to say none. And then I'm going to list several different treatments to choose from. Okay, let's put in ice, save and add another. Again, I don't need it to go to the next menu. Heat, save and add another. Don't need it to go to the next menu. And then nothing and save. Okay, so those are my different options. I'm going to save those. I'm going to come back over here to my note. Again, I'm going to refresh, and because I'm refreshing, it's probably going to make me keep choosing my template. I'm going to get rid of all of these questions from before. I'm going to come here to template and go to my BP template and what treatment was given to the patient. Well, because I did a multi-select, I can choose all 3 of these if I want. Now, obviously that's not going to be wise, but if I did, notice treatment given was ice, comma, heat, and nothing. So it's going to automatically put the comma in, and for the last 2, it will separate it with the word and. That's what the treatment suggestion would be based on what we put over here as our next question. I could have also come in and for ice, heat, and nothing, instead of saying a child type of none, I could have said it's a positive, negative, and save. Same thing for heat and edit and make it a positive, negative. Okay. And save. And for nothing, I'm going to edit, and I'm actually going to say a picker, and I'm instead of nothing, I'm going to say other. Okay, and then my text for here, I'm going to use that little squiggly and the 3 lowercase x's. And then I'm going to go to the next menu. Whenever you have a picker, you have to determine what kind of picker. So I can add, and I want this to be an alpha picker so that they can actually type, and I'm going to say describe treatment. Describe treatment given, and say save. Okay. So now if I were to save this and I were to come back into the note, again, I've got to refresh so that I make sure that it's updating everything. I'm going to go back over here to my template and go back to my proper template that we're working on and what treatment was given. Notice this is what it does when we do positives and negatives. And then other allows me to free text and just say no treatment was given and say save. So now, because I've chosen all of these, I'm going to get these words with a positive or negative, and then I'm going to also have an and what I wrote here. So let's see. They were given positive for ice, negative for heat, and no treatment was given because of the way I did that. So if I come back behind the scenes, you should feel pretty confident in the different child types. The multi allows them to choose more than one answer. Single only allows one answer. A picker means that you have to go to that third menu and choose whether it's alpha, a date, or a number picker. And then the positive negatives give you the little positive negative in front of the answer. None means we're not going to that next menu at all. Okay, so hopefully you feel pretty comfortable with how that works. So now that we've talked about how to add questions from scratch as well as answers, I want to go back up into subjective and touch on one additional thing. So if you'll notice down here in our macro text, I told you this kind of shows what it is that we're seeing when this populates in the note. And we know that the triple X's means that that's a placeholder for them to go to the next menu, gather answers, and bring them back and place them there. But what we haven't talked about is this little CR command right here, and you can see there's a couple of them. What this CR command, it actually stands for carriage return. Back when we used typewriters, a carriage return was like hitting the enter key. So when you put the little CR command in, it's like hitting the enter key twice before this patient reports that right? So this is going to actually start a brand new paragraph. It does populate in narrative form, but when you see those CRs, it actually drops it down once and then twice because it's hitting the enter key twice is what that means. So maybe you just want it to be right below, so you only put one CR in. If you want it to be down in a brand new paragraph, you would put 2 CRs in. So hopefully you're understanding what that means. If I were to come back into the note and I were to go up to subjective, see how this pane features is down here. It's because there were 2 CRs. So I'm going to come over here, and if those CRs were not there, it would have populated here. But because there were 2 of them, this is the first one, and this is the second one. Well, the first one actually was right next to the 2 weeks. Okay, and then the same is true right here. If I did not have CRs, it would populate right here. And then 1 CR would drop it here, and 2 CRs dropped it here. Okay, so that just helps to format a little bit. If you want it to start a new paragraph, you would use those CRs. And again, it's a little squigglies with lowercase cr. Okay, now I want to talk about the exam section. So in the exam section, I explained to you that everything is dependent upon the system of the body. And you must tell the software where this template, where you want it to populate. So if I look at One Click Normal and click Edit, all I'm saying is go to the next menu with this placeholder of triple X's, right? Well, when I go to the next menu under General, it tells me, yep, put it under General and just say NAD. That's all I want you to say. However, when I go to Back and I click on Edit, notice that Back is not one of the specific systems of the body. It's musculoskeletal, where it needs to populate. And then it says what to populate here. Okay, so your label can say whatever you want, but in the text, you must use one of the official prefixes that are listed so that it will automatically populate properly. If I did not do that, and I I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm just going to have it say no kyphosis or scoliosis and say save. Okay, and then I'm going to save here. Because I did that and I did not tell it what system of the body to associate it with, if I were to go back behind the scenes into the objective section, I'm going to click on objective. I'm actually going to get rid of all of this. And then I'm going to click on template. And from here, I'm going to do a one-click normal and just check them all, right? So everything that's back, really truly behind the scenes, said put that under musculoskeletal. So all of this is going to go under musculoskeletal as well as this one. And then we're going to have neuro and we're going to have gait. We're just going to have those three, okay? Even though these say back in the label, they do say musculoskeletal, except for the one that I just changed. So when I make those selections and say close, notice what happens here. I get this weird little comma and no kyphosis or scoliosis. The reason it does that is because I didn't tell it where to put it, under what system of the body. So I have to make sure that I populate it properly so I don't have a bunch of weird commas at the bottom because it doesn't know where to put things. Now, to make sure that you are familiar with the official prefixes and how they need to be populated, we go back into our template editor guide on page 39, and this can change as we update this, but you'll see this little blue box, and these are the official prefixes for the systems of the body. And again, this is the order that they will be in always when they populate in the note. So this is your reference here for that. Let's go ahead and come back over here, and we will be able to see that if we were to go behind the scenes in the template and put this neuro one up at the very beginning, you would think, oh, neuro is going to populate first. But because the order is listed here and neuro is way down here at the bottom, even though in the template it's showing up there at top, it will not ever populate it at the top. It will always populate right before psych or right after musculoskeletal, or if some of these are missing, it's going to still be in this order, okay? So just understand that is how that will work for the exam section. Now that we know the exam section, I want to talk about one other thing with regard to exams so that you understand how it works. Okay, I only have 2 items listed here in menu 1 under exam. I'm going to add a new item. I'm going to make it say none because I literally just want to create a line is what I'm looking for. And because it says macro, I have to put that line in macro too, so it knows what to do. I'm going to say save. You can see there's this line here. And I did that intentionally. I'm going to click save here because I want you to see what that looks like in the note. Let me go ahead and refresh this. And then I'm going to get rid of all of this information here. Whoops. And I'm going to click onto template. And I'm going to choose my BPSG template here. Okay. And you'll see this line that I made. I did that intentionally because here's all these other things. And you think, well, I want to change my general and I want to put some other things in here. But back behind the scenes in the template over here, there's nothing to change or edit, right? So here's a little trick on how you can edit those things. These will never change. You cannot change these. They will always be here. Okay, they are associated with the musculoskeletal system that was selected in this section. Remember over here, musculoskeletal. Okay, so how do I get this general in here and how do I change it? What do? I don't want it to say that. What you would have to do is you would have to go find this template, okay, and pull some of those things in. So now I'm going to show you how to pull things into another template. Let's go back behind the scenes and we are going to open up another template. And let's just go here until we find musculoskeletal. And I'm not sure if it actually has it under inactive. So let's go till we find musculoskeletal. Musculoskeletal exam, okay? And I'm going to open that up, and I'm actually going to use these little buttons. I'm going to go to the right here to right align that. Well, let me right align. And then I'm going to open up my back pane, and I'm going to left align that, okay? Now, this is the musculoskeletal template that has general and all the general stuff that is listed there. And I'm going to copy that general from here. And because I'm copying out of menu 1, I need to paste in menu 1. So I'm going to paste over here. And now I've got general. Now I'm going to copy HENT, and I'm going to paste. And I'm going to copy neck, and I'm going to paste. Okay, I'm just going to do those 3 so that you can see what I'm talking about. I'm actually going to close out a musculoskeletal here, and then I'm going to come here and hit save. Okay. Now, when I come back into my clinical note, and again, I've got to refresh, I'm going to come back into the objective section, and I'm going to go find my template. And once I find my template and open it up, you're going to see now that I have general, HENT, neck, and then it starts over again, general, HENT, and neck, okay? And the reason for that is because I just copied all of these, and they're all going to show exactly like the one down below. There's nothing that's changed because I haven't edited yet. If I want to edit them, now I'm going to come back here, and if I wanted to make edits and get rid of things maybe I don't want well developed, I'm going to delete that. I can delete that. If I want to move overweight up to the top, I can move that. I can do whatever I want to edit and modify it now because I have those in here. I'm also going to take this one and copy it and paste it in this same thing because I want you to see the difference where yours are that you've made and then where the others are that are automatically going to be there that you can't do anything with. So I'm going to save my template. I'm going to come back into clinical. I'm going to actually come in, refresh again. And then when I come back into objective and template, and I select my template. And when I'm creating, just so you know, I'm always coming back and forth and checking things. These are the 3 that I've pulled in that I have come in, brought the overweight up here, moved some things around, got rid of some stuff. If you want to edit these, this is how you're going to have to do it. Okay, final thing I'm going to show you is back behind the scenes in the template. I want to talk about that care plan and how that populates a little differently. So under patient instructions, and when I click on edit, you'll see that the only thing that populates is the triple X's saying go to the next menu and grab my answers and put them over here. And remember, they all populate in a list form. And you'll notice here, the only option for child types is a checkbox list. So if I were to come add a new question, it's not really a question, it's a category. I only have a checkbox list. I don't have single select, multi-select, positive, negative, or whatever, because I'm in the plan section, okay? I'm basically gonna add the label, add the macro, and then I'm going to cancel out of here. And then this is my subcategory. You're not going to see these subcategories anywhere. It's just going to be in a little bit more bolded font that you'll see that. And then remember I talked about that info tooltip. If you wanted, when they hovered over this to put something, you could put some information there if you're trying to help somebody to determine when they might do this for their plan and so forth. You would add in that info tooltip right here. Here's an info tooltip, and it's going to have some information that you could kind of hover over. It never goes on the note. It's just something for the provider to be able to see there. And then the same thing, when you come in here and your checkbox items, If you click edit, that will have the text, and you can also put an info tooltip in this section too. So if you want to add an item here, it's called an order, even though there's nothing there, and it'll ask you what kind of an order. You can just leave it. This does not do anything. So you can say general, you can say lab, whatever, put your label in your text, and it does the same thing. Whatever's in the label is what will populate in the note. If you do put something in the text, that will override what is in the label. So your categories, your subcategories, and then what your checkboxes are. And these are what is going to actually populate into the note itself. Okay. So that's how care plan works a little different. What I didn't show you was how to add a care plan. When we click on add and we say section, we went through how to add the section keys and choose from one of the options that are listed here, or type in the actual key code that we got from our template editor guide. But what we didn't do is come in here. The other option is to add a care plan. And when you come in to add a care plan, it's looking for a diagnosis code and user info. Please ignore both of these sections and just say save, and it would add a care plan right here. Now you can never have two of the same listed here. If you do, it's always just going to pick the one on top. So I'm just going to come in and delete that care plan, but that's how you would add a care plan here. Okay, I do want to go over just a couple of tips and tricks. If you happen to have questions in menu 1 and it has a picker, that's this little icon right here. If you neglect to put in what kind of a picker it is, in this instance it's an alpha picker, then the whole template may freeze up and just disappear and you can't find it. You're trying to figure out what's going on. Typically, if that ever happens, it's because you came in and you said, oh, I want to add a picker. You typed in something here, whatever you type, and you save, but you never came over here and said what kind of picker. So usually if someone calls, I click on all these to make sure there's something in the next menu. I see that and I get to this and I go, oh, that's a problem. We need to tell it what kind of picker it is. So that's just a tip in case something like that happens. Also, the CRs are a tip for formatting. Make sure that your sections here are all the sections that you want. If you are back in the note and you're thinking, why in my mental functional and I'm not seeing the template? Well, it's because you didn't put the mental functional in the template. And to find that again, use your template editor guide, go to page 18 and look for the key code. If you go to page 18, then it will take you to all of those key codes. Here's our mental functional section right here at the bottom, and this is the key code right here that you would need to add in if you wanted to put specific things in the template for that. So make sure that all of your sections have been added. Make sure that you have all of your questions, your potential answers. If you need to take something from another template, you can use the little left and right align. If you're copying from a menu 1 on one template, you'll need to paste in a menu 1 on another template. Okay, next steps. We have Tebra University, where you can go in and you can actually participate in the template editor training there. We also have a link to instructor-led training that you can register for our templates. So feel free to go in. You can go to the catalog, search for template, and enroll in that, or you can register for instructor-led training. And some resources that you have, we also have professional services. Many people want us to create their custom templates for them. We are able to do that. However, you need to make sure that you are sending us everything you want. We need to know your questions, your potential answers, how you want it to look in the note. So there is going to be some amount of work on your end to be able to provide us with what those templates are that you want to have us create. Many people actually set up custom training with us, and they might do 2 or 3 hours of just custom training while they're trying to create templates, and have a template editor specialist on the line with them to be able to guide and go, yep, that's what you do next. And so that might be an option for you as well, if that's something you are interested in doing. We also have lots of things in our Tebra customer community. It's a digital space where you can go in and work with other users of Tebra, collaborate with them, get inspired. Some of them may have some suggestions for templates and so forth. And then, of course, I'd always recommend anybody participate in the intake and register for that. Subscribe to our newsletter. Lots of great stuff in there. So appreciate you attending. Hope you all have a fabulous rest of your day. And thank you for joining, and good luck building templates.